Andrew Ryan figuratively argues a man should be entitled to the sweat of his brow, an allusion to what he views as the oppressive reach of government and religion. Now, Ryan and I may differ a bit on our political philosophies, but I like to think we'd find common ground on another issue. Is a man not entitled to groundbreaking video games? Indeed he is, Mr. Ryan, and this is one of those games. This is BIOSHOCK for the PlayStation 3, and this is easily one of the finest and most memorable video games of the last decade.
I'm not a bad person! Come back! Please!
In fact, personally, I'd go a step further and call BIOSHOCK one of gaming's all-time greatest achievements. After all, Rare is a game so captivating and so well-designed that even among a cast of characters as interesting as Andrew Ryan and Sander Cohen, perhaps the game's most intriguing and memorable character is its setting. BIOSHOCK takes place in the halls of Rapture, a massive city built in secrecy on the floor of the Atlantic by capitalist and political philosopher Andrew Ryan. You see, the world was changing in the 1930s and 40s, much of which infuriated the idealistic Ryan, a man who viewed the poor as parasites and America's New Deal as a social poison. Disgusted by what he called the insanity of the Soviet communists and parasitic American policy shifts, Ryan chose something else. He chose the impossible. He chose Rapture. Ryan's city is the main attraction in BIOSHOCK, a place as fascinating for the philosophy behind its construction as the town itself. This city, this community of free-minded individuals who favor the rights of the individual over those of the leeching community, is very much in line with the Randian philosophies driving novels like Atlas Shrugged. In fact, the Ayn Rand influence driving BIOSHOCK is perhaps more obvious than even the premise suggests. Ayn Rand, Andrew Ryan, Atlas Shrugged, the leader of the uprising in Rapture, is named Atlas. There's clearly a correlation between these two themes, and obviously Ayn Rand's works played a huge role during the development of BIOSHOCK. As Ryan so boldly proclaimed, Rapture was a place where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. Little did Ryan know the great would eventually be destroyed by themselves. We discover Rapture in 1960, nearly a decade after its completion. Playing as a man named Jack, we're forced into Ryan's world after our plane crashes into the ocean. We swim to a nearby lighthouse to escape the freezing waters of the northern Atlantic to find a mysterious doorway, behind which a massive bronze statue hangs from the wall, holding a banner which reads, "No gods or kings, only man." Below is a strange aquatic elevator, a bathysphere, and so begins BIOSHOCK. The moment you arrive in Rapture, you're just compelled by it. It's impossible to discuss BIOSHOCK without discussing its remarkably rich story and setting, two traits you might not typically associate with the usually action-focused genre of the first-person shooter. But BIOSHOCK is so very different. This is a story and character-driven shooter, an FPS with a lot more to say than simply aim for the head. As rich as Rapture may be with philosophy, the city is equally as compelling for its design. Rapture is one of the most memorable settings I have ever explored in a video game, period. Looking at its reality-based aesthetics and design so typical of life 70 years ago, it's like looking into a time capsule at a world which seems just as fictional as Rapture itself. The music, the 1920s Art Deco look, it all comes together to create a city that's fascinating to explore and never fails to provide a memorable environment. The game is visually stunning from both technical and art design perspectives, and you really feel like you're walking through its damp, dark hallways in BIOSHOCK. Of course, as you're admiring the aesthetics of those very hallways, you'll also have to survive them. And you'll do so in BioShock with a two-pronged combat system with loads of depth. Using genetically modifying plasmids, which, in no small part, contributed to Rapture's downfall, you can wield superpower-like abilities like throwing fire and electricity from your bare hand. And you can pair the effects of these plasmids with that of standard FPS weapons like pistols and shotguns for more potent and devastating impact. You can electrocute an enemy and whack him over the head with a wrench, for example, or set him ablaze and fill him with lead. It's a lot of fun to experiment with combinations of plasmids and weapons, and it controls like a breeze. Now, I'm playing the PS3 version here, which released a year after the game debuted on the Xbox 360 and the PC. So if you're debating which version to buy, you should know there are benefits to the PS3 version over the 360 version. It has a few extra modes and also benefits from generally sharper textures. So it's a little better looking, and because Rapture is such an eerily beautiful place, that's definitely a benefit worth considering. There's just so much to BioShock. I could literally spend an hour dissecting its moral and political philosophies, not to mention its awesome gameplay and incredible audio and visual design. But really, Rapture is a place you just have to discover for yourself. Now, would you kindly get off your computer? It's time to jump into the nearest bathysphere and head 20,000 leagues below the sea in BioShock.